Hello, I'm Henry Bonsu and this is Doubling Down, a new show where we tackle a topic that's blazing a trail on social media and beyond. You too can join the debate on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram by using the handle DoublingDownTV. Joining me today are writer and commentator Lola Adeshoye, the writer and assistant editor of Spiked, Ella Whelan, and the journalist Hafsa Karo Mustafa. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for coming in. Now, ever since its founding in 1787, the United States has considered itself an exceptional country. With symbols like the Golden Eagle and the Statue of Liberty, its anthem boasts of being the land of the free and the home of the brave, a benign superpower welcoming the huddled masses of the world. The post-World War II settlement entrenched American dominance through institutions like the UN, NATO, the World Bank and the IMF. But increasingly, both American and non-American analysts are warning that Uncle Sam's period of influence is coming to an end. Not only because other powers like China and India are rising, but because of America's internal war with itself. The election of Donald Trump has seen a huge rise in the national debt, political gridlock, major cultural divisions, and a decline in tourism and immigration. It's also been accompanied by turmoil in diplomatic circles among countries that no longer consider the US a reliable partner. Trump had won praise by trying to broker peace on the Korean Peninsula, but critics say his administration's botched handlings of negotiations with Kim Jong-un show just how far American diplomacy has fallen. So instead of preparing to see America great again, should the world be embracing the end of the American century? So let's get some of your early thoughts. I'm going to go with you, Ella. When you look at the States, do you see a nation preparing to be great again or a nation on the cusp of decline?
I think it's been declining for a while now. I mean, Trump certainly hasn't been a good thing for the US, and his style, his way of doing politics has thrown up a whole lot of problems, but the problems have been there for a long time. So ever since really the end of the Cold War, American political significance has been in decline. And I think Trump kind of brings that to a head in his sort of crass, brash nature. Really, people are less and less, countries are less and less taking America seriously. It has been in decline for quite a long time.
At the same time, obviously, it's booming as far as the economy is concerned, the stock market, and it still prizes the freedom of speech, the freedom to bear arms. And you, as a woman who loves free speech, don't you look to them and say, yes, they are still leaders in this, Ella?
Well, you would think, but actually some of the largest challenges to freedom of speech are happening in America at the moment. You just look at small areas like universities in America are bringing in policies that are incredibly bad for freedom of speech, Title IX, safe spaces, all this kind of stuff, which has been championed by many Democrats, even some Republicans. Yep. Trump himself says he's the big person, he's really pro-free speech. This is one of his big issues. He calls libel and tries to shut down anyone who even so much as looks twice at him. So in terms of what America once stood for, freedom, democracy, the things you mentioned at the start, less and less so, I think. It's more becoming this dwindling power that is now, its only reputation rests on this big kind of orange wonder who tweets now and then.
So Ella's not a fan of the light shining on the hill. What about you, Lola? I mean, you've been living there for more than 10 years, so there must be something keeping you there.
Yeah, it's a complicated question because obviously politically at the moment America's in a very difficult place. But culturally, within the sort of English-speaking world, I think America still has a lot of sway in terms of music and television and film. And I know that isn't the same as politics, but I sort of have a theory that, you know, culture and soft power has a lot to do with eventually what happens sort of with hard power. Yep. So I think that Trump's influence on the culture actually will be counterintuitive in terms of he seems to be making culture stronger rather than weakening it. But politically, for sure, I think he's putting America in a very difficult position whereby people aren't taking America seriously anymore. Yeah.
We'll come to that in more detail later on. But what about you personally? I mean, what attracted you to the States and why do you stay there?
Well, I got to America when Obama was running for election. I mean, I've been going there on and off since I was 16. Yeah. And New York in particular has always held a particular fascination for me. But I was there at a time when there was massive optimism and a sense of change, and it was just a wonderful time. Yeah. And you know, America's a fascinating place. What keeps
It's this
me
great
there,
experiment, isn't it? All these people from all over the world.
It's an entrepreneurial nation, and what I mean by that, some of that entrepreneurialism has been really messed up, like slavery.
Yes.
I think it was one of their sort of business ventures that was, you know, something that we can talk about in detail. But I believe in America's future.
Yeah.
And because it is a great big experiment, I think that if people keep fighting for its potential and its promise, it could possibly get there.
Hafsa, what do you think? Because past presidents have tried to export this notion of democracy to various parts of the world, including the Middle East, where you're from. You're from North Africa. Do you think that's part of the problem, part of the undoing of America now, that it's tried to do this and it's failed time and again?
Well, I mean, I'm going to slightly contradict both of my co-panelists here.
This is why you're here. This is why you're here.
Of course, because I don't see America as being this great beacon of democracy, even from day one. This was a country that was built on genocide and on slavery. So on that basis alone, it really can't be an example of democracy in any way, shape or form. And until very, very recently, you had half of the country that was still under Jim Crow laws. So there are lots of problems with American society.
But people believe in that American dream. You can come from anywhere in the world. Once you land in America, you play by the rules, you pay your taxes, you can even become the president of the United States.
Of course. But then again, you know, that could apply to any other country. You had France, you had a Hungarian president, you've had all sorts of other, you know, examples.
Meaning Nicolas Sarkozy is half Hungarian. Okay.
Exactly. But the problem with America is that on the basis of its birth, it was born under such sort of, you know, problematic issues. It can't then go on and say, well, hang on, we can come to your country and teach you democracy and how to live correctly. Because actually, what we're thinking in Africa and across the Middle East, so, well, why don't you sort your house out first before coming and giving us lessons? Because that's the problem, of course. We've seen that America went into Iraq and sort of stirred it and turned it into far worse than it was before. And we've seen that time and time again.
Ella's desperate to come in for a little addendum.
Yeah, no, just, I mean, point to me one country, one state that wasn't born on some kind of problematic ground. It's not, you know, to take it just on that level, I think is slightly simplistic, but the kind of what you said, the land of the free, America being this place where you can be anything and be anyone, is very strong. That's a very, you know, attractive.
It's an ideal, isn't it? It's a real ideal.
And the problem is today, you know, Trump's election has shown how devalued democracy is in America at the moment, because his opponents have, since day one, since he was elected in office, have totally trashed democracy and said he should be impeached and all this kind of stuff. You know, it should be a representation of a place where democracy is at its strongest.
Wasn't he the one who delegitimized his predecessor? You know, said he wasn't born in America, wasn't an American.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not saying that Trump is the kind of angel in this, but it's been really actually staggering how the attacks on democracy in America today have just been kind of given free rein, and it goes against its original founding idea.
Right, before you guys pick up on it, I'm going to just make a little link to something that you really are going to want to get your teeth into, because the challenges facing the United States aren't just on the military and diplomatic front, of course, that people are talking about. You've got the social front. So you've got Black Lives Matter, the women's movement, and the broader resistance on the one hand, that's something that Ella was mentioning, and the alt-right, the gun lobby, the right-wing evangelicals, and the conspiracy theorists on the other. So just how deep do those divisions go? What do you say, Laura?
Well, what I was going to say is there are two sides to America, which is its origin story and its marketing story. And those two things are very different. The origin story is one of genocide, it's one of enslavement, it's one of disenfranchisement, and it's one that is actually, the more time I spend there and the more I know, the more disgusted I am by the whole thing. And the fact that they still continue to this day to disenfranchise large sections of the population in such sort of overt ways is really, really deplorable. But the marketing story of America is the land of the free, the home of the brave.
The bald eagle, this great fearless, you know, bird.
Yeah, and what you have at the moment is those two things in the public bumping heads. The reality versus the perception. And what Trump has done, which is very interesting, and I think he did it unwittingly, is he's shown the reality of someone who's claiming to be for freedom and claiming to be for democracy, who's supporting right-wing, neo-Nazi, you know, like the NFL thing that's happening, you know, not wanting black people to have freedom of speech and that sort of thing. So I think that is an internal conflict that America really has to work out. And that's part of moving towards the future, I think.
Hafsa, when you go to the United States, how comfortable do you feel?
comfortable enough, essentially because of my fair skin, and also because I don't have any sort of obvious sign that says that I'm foreign or Muslim or Arab or anything. So on that basis, I'm comfortable enough. But just picking up on a point by Ella making that all countries were born on something, on genocide, I don't think that's true. Actually, African nations weren't born on genocide. Iran, which is a very old country in civilization, it's a very Eurocentric kind of vision to say that everything is born on genocide. No, it's not true. And of course, the problem is it was born on genocide, and Jim Crow ended very, very recently. And we have today the Black Lives Matter. We've seen police officers gunning down black youths as if it was a national sport, and that's happening literally as we speak, perhaps very now as we're filming. It's happening. So this is an issue, and I agree with Lola saying that Trump actually put the spotlight on that because he represents such a sort of dichotomy within American society, whereby you have on the one hand this sort of liberalism and all those things, and on the other you have this guy that came on board actually openly calling Mexicans rapists, calling for a ban on a religious group very openly once again, and remaining absolute and actually saying that people within the KKK or those kind of movements had good people.
But one of the things that was supposed to make America exceptional was that no matter where you came from, you could fuse into this American identity. It wasn't even integration, it was more assimilation, in contrast to what you might call the multiculturalism of Great Britain and France to a lesser extent, and Germany and some of the other countries. Do you still believe, Ella, that the United States has made a good fist of bringing separate identities together and forging a common identity?
I think the idea that when you come to live in America that you are American is a very attractive one. I think it's a good one. I think it's a good basis for a country to be inviting people in and creating a kind of a sense of a national identity, a kind of sense of
whether you're Italian American, African American, Polish American, it's all American.
Yeah, but I mean the problems that America has in how it does that have been long-standing. So, you know, issues that people criticise Trump of, which they should criticise him of his detestable treatment of Mexicans during his campaign and the deportations and the threats of them, been happening for a long time. Happened under Obama, happened under Bush. So Trump doesn't bring anything necessarily new to light of the problems that America has with creating Americans and the openness that is supposedly in that, calling it marketing. I think it's actually not so shallow as marketing. I think it is an ideology, an idea that people believe in. The whole attraction to Trump among so many voters, and let's remember he did get democratically elected under the system, is the fact that he was talking about America in this not in this kind of putting it down way, not to say ignoring its origins, but not being fixated on that, but to kind of get back to a sense of the controversial slogan, making America great again, which has become a byword for bigotry. But there is something positive in that, and I can understand why people voted him on that basis. All right.
Before you could come back in, we're going to just think through this in a different way, because people have always liked going to the United States. Huge tourist industry, but things are changing, and you can see them in the figures as they're reported. I mean, people are now talking about a Trump slump. You know, German tourists avoid US as travel destination. I mean, it's been really popular among Germans, not least because huge numbers of them went there both before and after the two main wars of the 20th century. Global tourism is up by 7%, but it's down to the US by about 3 or 4%. Now, can you tell me which country attracts more tourists than any other in the world? I'm asking you.
Well, I happen to know that it's France, so, you know, yes.
OK, well, it's France, but I tell you, Spain has overtaken the United States. If you look at how many people have travelled to Spain in 2017, it's gone up from 75.3 million in 2016 to 82 million in 2017. The United States has gone down from 75.9 million in 2016 to 72.9 million in 2017, and losing a huge amount of money. Arrivals from Germany down 20%, arrivals from the Middle East down 30.2%, arrivals from Africa down by 26.2%. What do you make of that, Lola?
I've had a lot of friends and people I've met around who've said to me, I don't want to go to America because of Trump. And I've had that from people of all walks of life. And the problem is that Trump and what he stands for is repellent to a lot of right-thinking people. You know, he is trying to wage some sort of racial, cultural war. And he ran on a platform of making America great, but it wasn't well, let's make America great because it has this huge ideological promise and we can fulfill the dream, which is actually what Obama was saying.
Yeah.
He's saying America's bad right now because we have immigrants who are stealing jobs, we have Mexicans who are raping people, we have this horrible man who claims to be American who wasn't really, who's an illegitimate president. They are making America bad. So let's make America great again based on getting rid of people and silencing people and otherizing people and basically bringing back what America was in the time when those people basically didn't have rights.
What do you make of that, Ella? Particularly this notion that the reason Trump was elected was because identity politics was running rife, and a lot of his base felt that that doesn't include me. I'm a white guy who's from the Rust Belt, and Obama doesn't speak to me, Hillary Clinton doesn't speak to me, all these women hashtagging don't speak to me, but this guy does.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you used right thinking. Did you mean to say right?
I meant right as in their right minds, not right leading.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought you meant. I think that's what made so many people vote for Trump, because there is this idea that there's the right thinking people and the wrong thinking people, and Trump voters were the wrong thinking people. And the way that, you know, the culture wars in America and the prevalence of identity politics in kind of day-to-day life has meant that vast swathes of the population feel incredibly disenfranchised, rightly or wrongly, and feel that they are the kind of elite in America is against them. And, you know, when you watch someone
Echoes
like...
of this in a country not far away from us, where we're sitting right now.
When you have someone like Hillary Clinton, who's so kind of baldly and openly plays to identity politics in such an unattractive way for so many people, it played into Trump's hand, and he's a very smart man. He used that.
He did indeed. I have to say, we'll come back to you in a moment. We want to see what our people out there who have been reacting to this on Facebook. Here's what they think, a flavour of what is being said. First, this from an American called Chuck Kidd, who says, America is at a crossroads right now, and which way we turn will determine whether America as we know it will cease to exist, or whether America will once again begin to shine that light on the hill that everyone sees and wants to be a part of. Our choice will define America for generations to come. Then we have another one from Dave Sanders, who says, I think the American people have been pushed just about as far as they're going to be pushed by the globalist communist Democrats. There is a civil war going on in America. Real polarization, Hafsa.
Yes, and I can understand, again, why Trump was elected. I mean, to be fair to electors, it wasn't just his bigoted message that was attractive. I think many people voted because they didn't like Hillary. I think many people thought that they liked somebody who was outside, supposedly outside the establishment, even though he was constantly a regular fixture at the White House dinners and was posing
Trump
as
is elite.
friends. He is elite,
yeah.
exactly. But for some reason, he managed to sell the image that he was the sort of working man's friend. And so all of these reasons. But again, I'm with Olola on this one. Make America great again, which is a great slogan, make Britain great again, make any country. But actually what it meant deep down was make America white again.
Ooh,
I think that was pretty much
Not yet, Ella, in just a moment, because we want to get more of some of the views out there. Here's what Twitter's been saying. We'll get this one first of all from Leonardo Carella. The withdrawal from the Iran deal is nothing short of a catastrophe. It's the day the American century ends. And this person calls himself the Reagan Battalion. Unlike Obama, Iran, Trump had the guts to pull out of the summit with Kim Jong-un after Kim started retracting on the promise of full denuclearization. Trump could have given in for the sake of good press. He didn't. This is called putting America first, America before himself. Thomas Levison says, as I watch GOP senators fall in line to wreck what I'd hoped for my son, I feel the sadness that comes when a dear friend dies. The end of the American century was inevitable. That it would be so swift and so extreme, that's the GOP's doing. Putin laughs and Lincoln weeps. And finally, Maxime Monkney says, as a non-American, I can tell you this. Your president has changed the world view of America being the greatest country to just a laughingstock. North Korea and China are playing him. Europe are shaking their heads. He's a buffoon. Hello. What do you want to say?
I do think that in some circumstances he is a buffoon, but the very interesting thing that came up there is that what Trump has changed up and brought to the fore is the kind of end of real politics. He does not do international diplomacy in any kind of traditional way.
But he's still interested in the Nobel Prize. You saw him at the rally the other day. Nobel. You know, he wants the Nobel Peace Prize.
I mean, this is it. That he does these. He's kind of like the how do I put this? Like the embarrassing uncle who's just going to say the thing that he wants to say at the Christmas party. He just says stuff on Twitter, and that is extremely dangerous and volatile on the international stage. But it also signals the fact that there is no one in America, or the American political establishment doesn't have a kind of a way to do this, doesn't have a way of keeping him in check as they did with other presidents. I mean, it stands to reason that actually his track record is nothing to write home about in terms of he you know, I totally agree with the stuff that he promised in his campaign was, you know, in my opinion, way out of line, and lots of people disagreed with it, but he hasn't made good on lots of them. In fact, the one thing that I think most people
has he flip-flopped because, and Lolly, you may have a view on this as well, he has no core deep down. He wanted the top job. He kind of fell into the top job, and he's presiding over what some people are calling, it is in the Atlantic, the American era, the end of the American era.
I'll tell
Look
you
at that picture.
The real problem is that Trump is a con artist. And what America has is not a politician, it has a person that's playing a game. And the game is completely self-serving. And this is actually beyond just regular political self-serving. Trump fooled a lot of people. He isn't as rich as he says he is. The reason why he can't fulfill his policies is because he doesn't have any that he really stands for. Most of them, by the time you do the economics, make 0 sense whatsoever. He's a multiple bankrupt. So if you tell me somebody like that, who they call a successful businessman, who's been bankrupt several times, is going to be able to run a country successfully, I would love to see that
Can't we separate
happen.
Trump, the entity Trump, both before and now that he's president, from the entity the United States? And like it or not, the global consensus was that there were two superpowers until 1990 or so, and now there's just one, although some are saying China will now be one of the leading superpowers, as well as a resurgent Russia. Has the American century been good for the world, would you say, Hafsa?
Well, I can't say it has, given that since the Second World War, you've had America involved in almost every single war and conflict, directly or through proxies for the past 50 years. It's messed up South America, it messed up parts of Africa.
But it would say, look at North Korea, sorry, look at the Republic of Korea, South Korea. We got involved, and look what it's turned into now under our protection. Look at Japan, one of the leading economies of the world, rebuilt, partly through America. Look at Germany, rebuilt, Marshall Plan. The Americans would say, we've paid for that, we guarantee security.
We always see one side of the coin, which is that there is economic prosperity on the one hand, but we don't see the flip side. So, for instance, whereas North Korea is obviously seen as the monstrous country that, you know, very sinister and closed up, we don't see that everyone is fully housed. We don't see that there's a housing crisis in South Korea. We don't see that there is all the pitfalls.
Where would you rather be
capitalism.
then?
Well, I don't know. I've never been to North Korea.
Pyongyang or Seoul?
I don't know. I've never been to either, so I'm not going to judge. On the basis that I will agree on one thing with Donald Trump, which is that there is a lot of fake news, and I hate the expression, but given that there's a lot of fake news, I cannot judge North Korea or South Korea simply on the basis of what the mainstream media says.
Ella, where would you rather live? Pyongyang or Seoul?
I haven't been to either.
Okay.
But,
good answer.
But the very interesting thing is that you're right in terms of America was previously seen as one of the kind of leading global figures. People look to it for you know, the way to go. And the interesting thing is that while that declined, I'm very much in agreement with you in the fact that, you know, you just only have to look at what's going on in Syria to see how absolutely detrimental American intervention into foreign countries is. But the desire for humanitarian intervention into places around the world now is playing into America's hands. So when Trump did an airstrike, people who had never ever supported him before or given him any kind of credit suddenly backed him up. So in the way in which now the Cold War is like threatening to come back, a new Cold War, America's hand is becoming stronger because that's where it has been historically.
I'm going to let you land, Lola, with 20 seconds. Where's America going to go?
I don't know. I really don't.
Big question, big thoughts. Are you going to continue to live there?
Yes.
I think there's your answer.
Now.
There's your answer. She still believes in Uncle Sam.
Well, I don't believe in Brexit, and Brexit is a much longer term plan.
Okay.
Trump
you can't drop that at the end of the programme.
She dropped the B-bomb, the Brexit bomb.
Trump is terrible, Brexit is brilliant.
All right, thank you very much, all of you. That's it for this week. Thanks very much to my studio guests, Hafsa Khader Mustafa, Lola Adeshoye, and Ella Whelan. Check out Doubling Down on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for news of next week's topic and to get your views in bright and early. Till next time, thanks very much for watching and goodbye.